This episode of the podcast is brought to you by New Bloom Labs.
Cannabis producers that are creating innovative products with multiple cannabinoids need the best, most comprehensive potency analysis there is. And New Bloom Labs is leading the industry with potency testing of Delta 8, Delta 9, 2 isomers of Delta 10, and a dozen other major and minor cannabinoids that are shaping the industry. New Bloom Labs also offers the fastest turnaround time in the industry. That's right, they deliver most test results in just one business day. So if you find yourself frustrated with your testing lab by waiting long hours or even days for your certificate of analysis, or if you're receiving inconsistent reports or reports that are just too hard to understand in general, you need to stop what you're doing and call the team at New Bloom Labs today at 844-TEST-CBD or visit their website at newbloomlabs.com. Superior science, rapid results, that's New Bloom Labs. Hello, my fellow people of the plant. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Cannabinoid Connect podcast, your favorite podcast that includes industry-facing conversations with the industry's leading experts that aim to educate and inform the public regarding the plant's endless benefits. My guest today is Amy Miles. She's the president at Kentucky Naturals. Hello, Amy. How are you?
Hi, Kevin. I'm very good. Thanks.
Thank you so much for coming on today. I'm excited to talk with you.
You're very welcome. You too.
So I previously had Mr. Jim Higdon on, who is the founder and CEO of Cornbread Hemp, which is based in Kentucky. And our conversation was very interesting because I did not realize the rich history of hemp in Kentucky. And so, I mean, why don't we start there? Amy, let's talk a little bit about the history of hemp in Kentucky and, where you decided to make this transition and what made you get into hemp.
So I think a lot of the history stems from our climate. Obviously, it's the perfect climate to grow hemp where we're located. And it's been in our history for centuries. So hemp was originally grown for rope. It was grown for things that were useful rather than the ingestibles that we have right now. And even during World War II, after some of the or after the hemp was prohibited from being grown, if you were able to grow hemp, you were required to grow hemp for the war effort, for ropes and things that the military could use. So,
Wow. And that was during the wartime period. Like, of course, it was made for other
correct.
things, but the government saw, hey, this is a crop that grows fast, and we can do a lot with it. So anybody growing it, we need your help. Step in.
We need your help. We need it now. As a matter of fact, there are a couple of people, and I won't name names for privacy's sake, but when we first started looking at growing hemp under the 2014 Farm Bill, this gentleman's father and grandfather were actually part of that war effort, and the government came in and said, you have seed. It was like an heirloom seed, or you need to use this now for us, for the country, for the good of our country.
Wow.
And so that was kind of something that was ingrained in them, and that's what set them on their path to trying to help get hemp legalized for growth again here in the state of Kentucky. So we're very proud.
So you're saying that particular family, it kind of runs in generations where now the descendants of the grandparents or great grandparents are now fighting for the same cause?
That's exactly right.
Wow,
right.
That is incredible. That's so awesome. And I've even talked to like another, I think she's from Kentucky, is Leah Laxtons. She's here in Texas now, big advocate when it comes to hemp. And she was talking about this concept of ditchweed, where this stuff obviously just grows, right? It's a natural plant that grows in any kind. But like you'll be driving in Kentucky and in the ditch banks, you'll see weed growing.
Yeah, well, I'm a product of the 60s, so I've been around for a while. And hemp and marijuana just kind of grew naturally in Kentucky. So a lot of my friends and family had seen that, witnessed that happening. And yeah, ditchweed is around here a lot. But again, it's the perfect growing conditions for hemp and for cannabis. So
Right, right. So tell us about yourself, Amy. So from what I gather, you didn't start, you haven't been in hemp your entire career, right? I know that you've kind of been in the medical wellness space. So tell us a little bit about that and what made you transition over.
so make a yeast extract for use in a product that most people know of, Preparation H. And we were
Yes.
looking for a line extension or something else to do. Um, and started hearing about hemp. My mother had Parkinson's disease, and I realized that in doing my research, hemp was showing a lot of promise for help with seizures and for other problems like Parkinson's disease, autoimmune disorders, things of that nature. So, as I did my research at the same time, the state of Kentucky was working really hard for that push for the 2014 Farm Bill and for us to be able to grow hemp here.
And that, for just those listening, the 2014 Farm Bill was basically its first run at a pilot program, right? Where
That's
states
correct.
needed to get things in order. They had to kind of get their strategy in place for this pilot program. And once they were accepted in, boom, they were able to grow and kind of test this market out. Is that correct?
Yeah, well, and it really wasn't a boom. It was kind of a bust in the beginning because the first seeds were seized prior to even getting them into the country. So the DEA grabbed them and the state had to fight for their release. So it was not an easy transition. And the pioneers in that group, James Comer is one of them, he's now a senator. Um, Brian Quarles has pushed really hard to help us get through. So from the 2014 Farm Bill to the 2018 Farm Bill, there's been a lot of stress, a lot of hard work, a lot of diligence, and not just on the part of the ag department here in Kentucky, but generational farmers, like I mentioned
Sure.
before, and other people. Tobacco was king in Kentucky. So a lot of the farmers used the tobacco model to grow their hemp. So it seemed like a really smart transition for them to
Hmm.
start off, with a crop that would work for them. So my interest came based on the fact that I was seeing a lot of promise for this product. And yeast extracts are a little different, but I use an alcoholic extraction. So it seemed like a natural transition for us to go ahead and start using an alcoholic extraction to make cannabidiol, for finished products.
That's actually that's a unless you're it's a different term that you're using. That's kind of a new extraction method that I've heard of, or because you hear about ethanol. I guess is it ethanol?
Like ethanol,
Okay,
alcohol.
okay, yeah, I got you.
Yeah,
Okay,
it's
okay,
ethanol.
okay.
Yeah. So it was an easy transition, but at the time I didn't jump right into it. I went to a lot of different meetings. The state of Kentucky was fantastic because they had a lot of seminars. So they had seminars for farmers, seminars for processors. And I have to say, it was kind of like a kumbaya moment for everybody because we were so super excited about the promise of this plant. And I
Well,
don't
and
know
you
if
and
you're
you
aware.
and y'all knew firsthand. I mean, given the history, like we just
Yeah,
talked about, right? So it's not
right.
like another state where, I mean, obviously this crop grew throughout the United States, right? Before we were the United States, but as we formed different states, there were different regulations put in place, and others were more primed to grow than others, right? And so for a state that
Exactly.
maybe had no experience and no history, this is kind of like they're looking at it as not a gamble or a risk, but more of like, okay, this looks like there's promise here. Whereas people from Kentucky are like, not, yeah, of course there's promise because we know that our ancestors,
They
lived
did it.
a fulfilled life with it. Yeah.
Yeah, they did it. Now, it was a little bit different. So you had back then, they weren't using it for elixirs as much, although you can find old bottles with the cannabis labels. So they knew back years ago, centuries ago, that it had a lot of promise for medicinal value.
Sure.
But when I was looking at it for Parkinson's disease, they were just starting to come out with information. But what I did find at the time was that our own government has a patent through the
Right.
National Institute of Health. You probably know about
I
this.
think it's a synthetic CBD, but it's I think it starts with an M, like I'm gonna butcher Marinol or I don't know.
Well, but you're thinking of GW Pharma. I mean, our own government.
Right,
Our own government has
right.
a patent. Yeah, Marinol is owned by GW Pharma.
Okay, so I'm getting the name wrong, but I am aware that the government has a patent, which is hilarious because of the
So yeah,
hypocrisy,
it's
right?
for
Yeah,
antioxidants and neuroprotectants. So the
sure.
neuroprotectants was the part that really showed promise for Parkinson's disease and for people with epileptic disorders. And that is what GW Pharma was looking at, and that's how they got their Marinol, which is the synthetic THC. They
Got
also
you.
got epidiolex, and
That's
that's
right.
the plant extraction form.
Right.
So those are approved patented items, and that's being used for epilepsy at this point.
So you stumbled upon that research, and given your mother's condition with Parkinson's disease, you thought, okay, and you had already been seeing the traction and momentum happening in the state of Kentucky after the farm bill, right? So you're thinking, okay,
Right.
this makes a lot of sense.
It makes a lot of sense. We were cautioned every time we went to a meeting, this is new. This is the gamble. We have the farm bill behind us, but it's all R&D. And we all had to fill out our information for the state ag department. We had to tell them what kind of research we'd be doing. Most of the farmers were told it would be better if they could hook up with a processor. And then over time, it got a little bit easier. So by 2018, you had a huge amount of farmers really interested in farming for the coming year, and you had a number of processors coming online.
Hmm.
So things had a lot of promise, but only the people that were partnered with larger groups were able to make it. And so at that point, I was seeking out someone to work with, someone was like-minded, some people who were actually looking for the same opportunities. And I wanted, because of my mom, because of people that I know whose children are autistic, people that I had spoken to who had other maladies that I knew CBD works to help. Wanted to find someone that, or a group of people that were interested in having products that actually worked,
Right.
products that brought something to bear to the market, that weren't just a fly by night, weren't in the market just to quick in, quick out, make a fast buck.
Hmm.
And I met the people that I work with now at Core Life, and we developed a line of products under the World's Strongest Man name. And so it's been a very strange journey for the hemp industry, because in 2019 the industry kind of turned on its head. And I'm sure you've talked to people who have expressed that also. Just a huge number of people were allowed to apply for farming licenses, and at the time the price that they were receiving for their hemp crops was very high. It was very lucrative. So it was that risk reward that they said, yeah, I can get into this. I can, even if I don't make top dollar, I can still make good money. And so a lot of the processors were on board as well. And as some of your other guests have talked about, made promises that they couldn't keep.
Hmm.
And a lot of that wasn't necessarily through any fault of their own. It was kind of like the perfect storm. So
Hmm.
you have a huge buildup in the market for people with CBD products that were quality, not quality products, and products that weren't tested properly
Right.
and weren't produced properly. And so I think the consumer also got a real bad taste in their mouth, so to speak. And they decided, to be a little bit more cautious about it.
Yeah, or they detracted completely, right? And it's kind of a struggle
Exactly.
to to get them back and explain that there is efficacy. You know, you touched on so many points that has just been an ongoing conversation on this podcast. I mean, as you mentioned, like, you know, when you say when you were first entering, you knew the efficacy. You said you wanted to partner with the ones that were doing it right, right, and making high quality products, because you mentioned that, that those people were able to make it, and there's others that weren't. And really, what I think stands out is the partnership aspect that you mentioned, the partnership between the processor, right? Because it's a
Right.
new industry and there's a lot of bottlenecks, right? There's a lot of farmers that are saying, you know what, I can switch to hemp, I can grow this. My ancestors have
Right.
done it, very familiar in the state of Kentucky. They did that, but you know, some of them didn't think about the next stage, the processing stage, or even the contract to sell the crop, right? So it just
Right.
kind of muddied the waters there. But then also there's other variables, like the fact that there's regulation, but there's no enforcement of regulation. So for
Yeah.
example, like testing
Yeah.
labs, right? Like there are some testing labs that are really kind of by the book, and there's others that are kind of giving different potency levels away to keep, you know, a customer retained, you know, and keep them coming, because there's a lack of enforcement. So there's so many different variables, and then not to mention the FDA consumer oversight of CBD products overall. That's a whole different subject, but I can see how it's gotten muddied. So has it gotten better? Has the Kentucky market kind of settled and matured and straightened out, or is it still evolving and working itself out?
It's still evolving. I think that it reached fevered pitch the end of 2019 to the beginning of 2020. We don't see as many farmers growing, although you can see the number of acres that are approved, but that doesn't mean that the farmer's going to grow that many acres.
Right.
So the cost to get your license, which we grow on a farm in Sparta, it's down the road from the processing plant. Um, you can go ahead and you can get your license for as many acres as you're able to grow on. Doesn't mean you have to grow on that many acres. We still report to the ag department through the research program because they haven't finalized the information with the USDA. We're moving toward that. We were the first state to actually apply with the USDA. And so Kentucky's kind of been at the forefront. But then when the USDA started with all their regulations, which would impede the farmers' progress and then also make problems for the processors, they said, wait a minute. We're going to back up. We're going to take a pause. We're going to continue on the same path we've been on as these things get worked out. So Kentucky's been very smart. Our leaders have been very smart on how they've helped us move forward. But to your point, I think with the testing labs, with the problems with the industry, with the farming, it all goes back to the FDA.
Mhm.
And having or being in, having one foot in the pharmaceutical side, it's kind of like biting the hand that feeds, right? So um, one of the ingredients that I'm involved with is sold to one of the people that makes the COVID vaccine, to give you an idea of the
Mhm.
size. And they pretty much get what they want.
Right.
Okay. So um,
Yeah, the FDA
I
was quick to approve the vaccine, which of course was needed, right? Because we needed to
it
get
was
people
needed.
healthy. But it just
It was
shows that
needed.
it just shows the focus of like what they can do when it's prioritized, you know?
Well, and this week, and I try to stay up on the legislation as much as I can. And the FDA is really the people I work with, I think, know this also, that the FDA and that part of the hemp industry is what I really focus on. So we focus on GMP, we focus on, our standard operating procedures and following the, you know, the letter of regulatory processes. But I like to have an eye on what's going on the other side with the pharmaceutical side. I fully believe that this could have already been done. The FDA could have stepped in and said, hey, we have the authority to make an exception um, to the hemp industry and say that although we haven't shown a specific time when it entered the market as an ingredient for nutritional supplement or dietary supplement, we're going to make that exception and we're going to allow it. They could
Mm-hmm.
do that.
I totally
Why aren't they
agree.
doing it?
And that's what I was
What,
going to ask you. That's like the $1 million question. What's your view? Why do you think they're dragging their feet?
pharmaceutical industry, the
Pharmaceutical.
pharmaceutical industry. So, so if you think about what happened in the past, right? So while we're not allowed to grow hemp in the United States, you have another company that's working on their patented process overseas.
Oh, they're already
Okay,
ready to go. They've got the products on the
they're
shelf.
ready to go. They
Yeah.
come in. They're able to come in. They're able to get their world order patent just like that. And as soon as it's legal, then there go.
So what you're saying is it's inevitable, but the FDA is dragging their feet due to protected interests of the pharmaceutical industry.
That's just me. That's
Yeah,
my
no,
take
I
on it.
no, I
Uh,
agree. I'm just laying it out because I want to make sure. Because like that's the thing, right? This is where I get confused because I agree with you, but I wonder like, okay, they know it's inevitable. We just said the pharmaceutical companies have all these products already at R&D and ready to go. It's like I just don't understand why. Maybe it's just so complex and there's so like that it just they're letting it naturally unfold instead of forcing it to like disrupt certain interests like we just talked about. I don't know.
so I think that if you go back to the fact that the government has a patent through the
Right.
NIH, okay? So you see that the government has already, in some shape or form, seen that there's a positive side to the hemp. They really need to go through and say, is there a negative side? They want more testing. They want more testing. They want more information. Um, that's being submitted, and we are going through part of that. And I think a lot of companies are submitting, but in order to do that, you have to have a lot of money as well, right?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so I think it's causing a huge gap in those that are able to move forward and those that aren't. And the ones that
Mhm.
are able are the pharmaceutical industries,
Right.
right?
Or the
So
or the large MSOs that the pharmaceutical companies are going to buy up. You know what I mean? Like,
correct,
right,
correct,
right.
correct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
I
because the
think that
pharmaceutical companies probably aren't. I mean, I'm sure that there are some, but I'm sure that there are some that are not like cultivating and have an indoor grow. Like they're sourcing that material, and then from there, they're really going in the lab and figuring
right,
out formulations. Right? Yeah.
right, right. I think that there's probably some focus, and there may be a few people, in a side department that are actually looking at um, products and opportunities because they've already presented themselves,
Right.
right?
Yeah. What also fascinates me is like when you get outside the public sector and you look at the private sector, like you've got the healthcare industry who's so focused on the traditional medications and medicinal practices, and then you have cannabis that really look you can go the recreational route, but you can also go the hyper focused medicinal route, right, where you're isolating
Right,
cannabinoids and you're doing different things. And so to
right.
me, the private sector, you talk about a gap, like the gap between the private sector is incredible because healthcare is not even talking to these people that are formulating these products on the other end, So I feel like that's going to be an interesting catch up as well. Once
Well,
things starts to
I
shake
think
out.
I think it is. I think that what you're seeing though is that if they so the FDA has a choice. So right now they can choose to either disrupt our industry or let us go as we are, or they can choose to say to the pharmaceutical side, oh, we're going to let these guys through whether you like it or not. And they know that if people start to look more toward natural products that work,
It's a game
because we do
changer.
know that it works, it's a
Yeah.
game changer.
Yeah.
And what game does that change? It changes the monetary outlook for some of these pharmaceutical companies. Then they have to step in and then they have to hurry and try to patent something or the other, which patenting a natural plant material is difficult unless you have something. I mean, GW Pharma went for the orphan drug, right? They went
Mm-hmm.
for something that was out there, but that was small enough that they could wrap their arms around. And now, even if you try to get a trademark for a product, for a CBD um, product, it's difficult if you have CBD in the application,
Because it's
because
a naturally occurring compound.
they look toward Epidiolex as the only approved CBD product. Okay.
Yeah.
So they're looking at that drug product as the only CBD product, even though the 2018 Farm Bill is there. And then you have tech companies kind of working against you when you have advertising that you like
Uh,
to do on Facebook.
don't even get me started on that. I'm still in Instagram jail. My account is still in jail. Yeah, I think it's been over 30 days too. I got to check with Instagram.
Yeah,
It's so I hate how it's so subjective. That's one thing. Like if I
yeah,
were able to go to a web page and just look at the guidelines and be like, "Oh, okay. Like specifically do not post this. Do not link to websites. Do not
right.
like if they laid that out, then I'd even feel better about it." But the fact that I
But they
mean
don't.
and that's outside of cannabis. I mean, that's the world that we've learned that we live in after 2020, right? There's a lot of censorship that goes on. So
Mhm.
I hopefully that will change. But yeah, it's difficult. It's very, and that isn't in, that's a handicap against really kind to trying to showcase the efficacy, whether it be anecdotal data, right? You could still play within the regulations of what they want if they allowed us to
That's right.
advertise. You know,
Right.
you can't tell Grandma Mary that she's feeling amazing with her CBD rub, if she's saying she is. I mean,
Right.
so
Yes.
yeah.
Testimonials, things like that.
Right.
You get in a lot of trouble with that. Yeah.
Right.
So there
It's
were a lot of forces working against the hemp industry, but we as Core Life and World's Strongest Man, we're trying to forge ahead, trying to stay positive, keep pushing forward with the products, because we kind of focused on going more mainstream, although the line itself, as you can kind of tell by the name, as it implies, is more towards a sports focus, because we kind
mhm,
of wanted to find a niche and amongst all of the thousands of good and not so good CBD products that are out there.
right.
So that's kind of where we are, and where we've tried to stay.
Let's talk about it. Let's talk about Core Life first. And then I believe I've met the founders of World's Strongest Man CBD. I think we've had a call one time. And I love the branding, the packaging, and just the concept of it because you see so much of CBD products as it relates to recovery and athletics,
Right,
particularly MMA and like, combat sports, even golf. You have golfers taking tinctures for
right,
calmness, and it only makes sense to target strongman competitions, right? Because these men and
right.
women are exerting muscles and their strength every day, and after that you really need your muscles to recover. So yeah, tell us about those brands.
So, well, I have some of the products behind me too, but I'll hold the brochure up. So, what we tried to do was focus on topicals as well as the tinctures.
So to pause real quick, so for those listening, she has a brochure up and she's just showing the various products. But Amy, Core Life is the family brand, and World's Strongest Man falls under Core Life. Is that right?
So Core Life is the distributor of the World's Strongest Man brand.
Got you.
Okay,
Okay.
so we are vertically integrated as far as the farm to the processing to the finished product. So we like to be able to tell our customers that we know exactly where the product started at, and where it's
Sure.
gone, what it's gone through, and where it's going to, right?
Right.
So I think that's really important.
For sure.
So the products are for topical use, for muscles, for specific pain. We also have soaps, an activated charcoal soap, which is fantastic, um, for facial cleansing as well as for body care. And then we have the topicals. We have somebody behind you sneaking through.
It's my wife.
Here you go.
My
Um,
coworker in the office.
your coworker.
Yes.
So we have a DMAE lotion, and DMAE is found in a lot of supplements, but it's also good for your skin as far as healing and soothing. So this is really important too when you
Right.
have, the exercise. And it's not just the strongman, it's also people who like to work out, the fitness, and become more conscious about that in 2020. That's become a real big deal.
Right.
Um, and then we also have the muscle sap, which is a really great product because it has essential oils in it as well as the CBD. And let me show you that. It's in a twist up.
Oh, very
So
nice. So is it like, for those
yeah,
listening, it's like is it like a stick that rolls on?
it's like a stick that rolls on. So you can target something specific like your shoulders or your knees.
Okay.
Use the lotion. Um, as far as pain, we have a cooling gel also, which is really good for aches and pains. And I know Martine, who does a lot of our, is our spokesperson for World's Strongest Man. He likes to use this. He was the World's Strongest Man champion.
Martine,
And
he has the
yeah,
funniest commercial right now
I
uh,
know,
on Geico. I really do think
like,
that's a funny commercial. He's like,
yeah,
take you down
yeah,
to the recycling center. And he's crushing those boxes. That
yeah,
is so funny. So
great.
he's the main spokesperson for this.
Yeah,
Oh,
for World's
wow.
Strongest Man.
Love
Yeah.
it.
Um, and so we also have the tinctures. So we have 1,800 and 3,000 milligram tinctures. So we like to give our customers product that we know is going to be beneficial. And I think for people who work out, people who are really active, they need that higher milligram strength.
Right.
So we have mint, dragon fruit, and tangerine flavors.
Right.
So
Especially
we
like
also have,
when it comes to strongman competitions, you're a big human being, right? Like you're
yeah,
lifting, you're
yeah,
eating a lot. So
yeah,
it only makes sense for the milligrams and the potency to be a bit higher.
that's
Yeah.
right. Yeah. So that's our first foray. We have new products coming out down the road. So Core Life, though, we try to again follow what will be the FDA guidelines whenever they come about, and we hope that's soon because we think that's going to weed out a lot of the bad actors.
Yep.
And COVID did that to some extent, but we feel like once those regulations come, that's going to help. We're working now on our certificate from the Hemp Authority. We already have our good manufacturing practices in place, and so
Hmm.
it's just part of the process. But the guidance would be very helpful,
Yeah.
and I think, yeah, for everybody.
No, I totally agree. I went off on a little thought when you were saying that about how COVID weeded some out. That's so true. I wonder, with more states becoming adult use, if we'll see waves of like new entrants. And I know that adult use states are THC and we're talking about hemp, but
Right?
you could have a situation where someone wants to start in THC and then they see how like competitive and just kind of, challenging, I guess it may be, where they may switch and say, well, maybe I'll try hemp first, or something like that.
Right.
So I'm just, my point is that in any kind of situation, there may be these ongoing waves of new entrants. And that's not to say that everybody's has bad intentions of those people in those waves, but we will see, I think, a period of shakeout and then a wave, shakeout,
Mhm. I
wave.
think you're right. I think
Yeah,
Delta 8 has been part of the wave.
it has.
Um, we did get a letter from our state telling us that in no uncertain terms, Delta 8 is illegal.
That's what Kentucky's one of 11 states, I think, that's banned Delta 8. Is that right?
I believe that's correct. And
Yeah.
there will be more perhaps. I think, of course, that's going to be states
What do
where
you think about
marijuana
Delta
is.
8? What's your thoughts on Delta 8? Because I know
Um,
y'all's focus is therapeutics, right? Because you can really,
yeah,
when we talk about hemp and THC, you can formulate these products in a way that are designed for recreation or medicinal, therapeutic, right? So tell me what your thoughts are on Delta 8.
so so going back to when I first started getting into the hemp industry
Mm-hmm.
and learning about it, hemp and marijuana diverged, right? And I feel like that's one reason why our senators and some of our representatives got behind it because it could be differentiated. All right, and we could look at it for the fiber that we can produce,
Sure.
for fire
Heard.
starters that we produce,
Yeah.
for the topical, and it provides some. And you got to be careful when you say therapeutic benefits, right? So the benefits that it provides,
I
we
thought
can show
therapeutic
those
was a
without.
safe word. Is therapeutic not safe?
Well, I don't know. I haven't gone back and looked at those last 15 letters that the FDA sent out. I guess is it extract? It depends. You know, it changes, right?
What do you? Yeah, I know, right? You never know. Like,
You don't know. You don't know, and you have to be really careful because sometimes if you pair a word with a photo, then the implication changes
sure, the context.
in
Yeah,
that way too. Yeah.
yeah,
So I think that the most important thing here on the Delta 8 side is that a lot of people, a lot of friends are taking advantage of the situation as best they can while they can. But I mean, I told some of my associates that I think THC by any other name or a rose by any other name is still a rose, right? So I think that the writers of the Farm Bill never in their wildest dreams
no, thought this would
thought
happen.
that processors would
Right.
get into it and start to extrapolate all of these various cannabinoids and actually come out with you know, Delta 8, Delta 10.
Right.
um, Delta 9 was going to be the one.
That's so funny. Yeah, I totally agree that that's human ingenuity at its finest right there, right? It's
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
and to me, I don't regularly consume Delta 8 products. I tend to try to stay away from them. Not to say that I discriminate. I just prefer
mhm,
Delta 9, like the actual THC.
right.
Um, but I think that's what's most fascinating to me is that it's the biggest loophole. Like it just shows that it shows first the demand of the psychoactive properties that parts of this market's demographic want in demand, right? And so it kind of shows that they want that cannabinoid, they want that effect. Not to say that there's others that don't want CBD. There's a whole, and the
Right.
other CBG and the other compounds, but that's just an example of that. And the human ingenuity aspect. It's like, wow,
So
you
a lot
know.
of people that have come to us and wanted to have those therapeutic benefits don't want to get high,
Right,
or
exactly.
they
No,
or they don't
exactly.
want to be tested and have that show up on a metabolite panel,
Sure, sure.
right?
And that's what's so amazing about the plant is that you mentioned the material goods aspect of that, which we're not even kind of in that discussion yet as a market, as an industry. That's super, super infant, right? But you've got
Right,
CBD products, you've got CBN products, you've got full spectrum, broad spectrum, you've got THC dominant. This plant
right.
touches so many different demographics, age groups, races. I mean, everything. It's pretty
Yes,
remarkable, you know?
it is. And I've had people walk in and talk to me that have been smoking marijuana for cancer, you know,
Right.
pain alleviation, that kind of thing, and wanted to try it because they didn't want to have the Delta 9 as part of
Right.
their lives, part of their
Right.
healing process.
And
And
that
then
is a great
others who said,
switch. Yeah.
yeah, it's a great switch. So I think where we are with that is I think that as far as the state of Kentucky and the powers that be, I think that it's their intention to keep hemp and marijuana as separate things.
You don't think they'll
As
ever
much as
go adult use?
no, I didn't say that. I said I think that they'll try to keep them as separate things.
I see. So
Um,
they'll definitely categorize and really put regulation around. And
yeah.
one thing that I would think that they'd have to really focus on is the zoning laws when it comes to hemp cultivations and marijuana cultivations, right?
Well, and you don't want to cultivate them together.
But
I'm not the main grower, but if you have hemp with your marijuana, it's going to mess up your marijuana.
that's my point. That's my point. So with
Yeah,
zoning laws, like that's what I would
right,
imagine one thing that
right,
they'd really have to focus on as they separate marijuana from hemp in the state of
right,
Kentucky. Yeah.
right. So, and I think it's going to happen. I can't tell you when. I
Yeah.
mean, but there will be regulation, and there will be, you know, I think that a couple of your guests, you've talked about the 1% or above. I think that for the hemp industry, they're going to keep a cap on it for that
Yeah.
very reason. They'll have to keep a cap on the hemp so that they can continue to differentiate it from medical or recreational marijuana.
Sure. And they will always have to do that, but I hope that they make the farmer's job easy. Because
Yeah,
1% THC is very, very little in terms of even
it is.
extracting or doing anything and so I think
Well,
there's a
and
yeah, there's a
go
way
ahead.
you could there's a way you could cap the THC, but 0.3 is a beast to deal with. In, like, imagine, a state of Texas where it's super hot. The plant
Right.
naturally, increases its THC potency with the sun. So, like, that to me doesn't seem like you're helping anybody, if you know what I mean, because you're inhibiting the industry, you're making it harder for the farmer. So I think there's a way we could find a middle ground there.
So perhaps if they had some kind of a contingency, if it was over that percent, that you had to go through a particular chain of custody and have it remediated
Right, right.
immediately by a source, and they had to know about it. So, if it had to go to point A, point B, point C, you had to do some of the weights and measures, and then the farmer still gets to receive a portion of their uh, money back,
Sure,
or the majority of the crop.
sure.
Um, and then they can help a processor out at the same time. Then there's no loss,
Right,
right?
right.
But it's regulated, but regulated to the extent that everybody wins,
Yep.
and nobody loses.
Yeah,
So
no, I
because
I
those
agree.
things are gonna.
I agree. Yeah. And that's one thing where I think that, like, states like Texas could really learn from states like Kentucky, who have been in the game for a while, and think through those different aspects of regulation. I'm not saying that Texas is not thinking about that, but that's such a nuanced example. And you're so right about how that could play out, that we don't have the experience and the trials and tribulations to kind of learn from those things and apply them, you
I
know?
think part of the reason that it hasn't happened faster, or the regulation, is because they need to talk with more farmers, and they need to talk with more processors. They need to
Hmm.
talk with the people whose, boots are on the ground
Right.
and who are
Exactly.
doing it. And knowing that when you process, you concentrate that plant. And then when you
Mhm.
produce your finished product is when you bring it back to, the less than 0.3% THC.
Right.
So,
Right.
there have to be more conversations, have to be, not just the governing bodies, but the people that are actually working with it, who, have a full understanding of the process. So,
Absolutely.
but
Yeah,
I think I can work that out.
that would be the ultimate collaboration. Yeah, I mean, those are, like you said, they're boots on the ground. They're the ones that are dealing with these challenges every day. So
Right,
why not work together to make it better? Yeah.
right. Yeah.
So Amy, what do you foresee in the future when it comes to Kentucky hemp, and all the opportunities and possibilities with this amazing plant that we've talked about in the last 40 minutes? Pull out your
Yeah, I
crystal
think we're gonna
ball.
be my crystal ball. I do think things are starting to level out. I think that our ag department has a really good handle on where we're gonna go in the future. I think that, um, based upon the fact that the USDA looked at Kentucky's research program as guidance for the final USDA guidance itself, speaks volumes about
Hmm.
where we are. And so I'm really proud to be from Kentucky. The first NOCO I went to, if you had Kentucky on a shirt, people were high fiving. It
You were
was,
like the VIP, like elite kind of, like, oh, that there's the OGs
yeah,
walking in the building right there, the Kentucky.
yeah, it was great. It was great. Although it was like Woodstock meets Wall Street. And I think, it's probably gotten worse over the years. But Kentucky will forge ahead. We'll move forward. I mean, the people here, are entrenched in it. The farmers, that have stuck with it know how to grow it.
Hmm.
They know now, unfortunately, the pros and the cons of it. So I think, as we move forward, we're going to see those changes. And then in terms of the processing too, but we really need the FDA to step up. And I mean, step up. I don't be afraid anymore. Don't let, you the pharmaceutical companies or whoever it is push you away. And I just saw recently where now they're going to have a department that finds ways to identify on labeling that certain vegetables are healthy. To,
Sounds like a really great
really
resource of
great.
time and energy and
Yes,
focus
and
spent
energy
on that.
and
Yes.
focus. Yes,
That and let's
focus on.
Yeah, that and let's ban menthol cigarettes.
Yes, yes. which were some of my faves back in the 70s. I'm sad to say,
I don't
but
even smoke, but I think that that's crazy. Like, what? I
yeah,
don't know.
it's
But
nuts. I think a lot of people are going to be upset.
yeah.
Um, but yeah, I Kentucky will be hemp's here to stay in Kentucky. It really is. And CBD, I think for all of us, I think uh, that I believe in it. If I didn't
Right.
believe in it, I wouldn't be doing it. I mean, it's something that I've seen firsthand improvement in people's lives.
For sure. I,
It's pretty amazing.
I believe in it, and I believe in every cannabinoid found in the plant. We're barely scratching the surface of it, and that's what's most
Yeah.
exciting. CBD is
Yes.
amazing. THC has its efficacy and its value. CBN, I
Yes.
mean, we're just learning, and that's what I'm excited. Amy, as the industry continues to evolve, especially in Kentucky, and when you guys keep, blazing the charge there, let's have you back on and let's talk about how things have evolved and changed and just catch up, if you want. I've really
Yeah.
enjoyed
That
talking
sounds
with you
great.
today.
Yeah. Yeah. Hey, listen, if anybody wants to go to the World's Strongest Man website,
Yes. Oh
World's
yeah. No,
Strongest Man,
that was my last thing. I was gonna say,
yeah,
tell us where you can find
yeah,
your website and social media.
it's WSMCBD.com, worldstrongestmancbd.com. And if they put in podcast, get 20% off.
Boom. There you go. See, you're gonna get a
All
discount
right.
being on the show. Love it.
Yay. That's right. That's right.
I'll make sure to put that
Okay.
in the description box for YouTube so that people can find it. Okay.
Very good.
All right.
Very good.
Well,
It's
thank
good
you.
to talk to you.
Yes, good to talk to you, and thank you all for listening. Bye.
Thank you. Bye bye.